Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome guests. Oh, can I get a approval of the county board minutes?
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. All in favor signify by
Aye.
saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Not at this time.
Can I get a motion to accept?
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Social service report. Brad?
This is proclamation first with Jackie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jackie. Good.
I have to read for you today a proclamation, and the proclamation is regarding Child Support Awareness Month, and it says, whereas county child support officers and support enforcement aides are dedicated to providing outstanding services to the people of Minnesota through their work with the people we serve and the use of the statewide child support program. And whereas county child support workers are responsible for establishing paternity and orders for child support, they work with the payers to assure accurate orders and timely payments, and when needed, take enforcement actions to ensure collections of child support dollars owed to the children of Morrison County and Greater Minnesota, totaling in excess of $4 million each year. And whereas county child support workers must meet very high standards of job performance and the duties, as the duties require that they be well-versed in a number of areas, including the legal system, to effectively provide those services to the public. And whereas county child support workers play a large role in the continued success of welfare reform by helping to move Minnesota's low-income families towards self-sufficiency, by assuring regular and timely payments of support, and reducing the need for reliance on costly financial assistance programs. And whereas it is important that all citizens recognize that the important services that county child support officers and support enforcement aides provide to the residents of Morrison County. Now therefore, the members of the Board of Commissioners hereby proclaim August as Child Support Awareness Month. And just so you know, our governor also signed a similar proclamation doing the same earlier in August this year.
Okay. I would so move on that, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
we have a motion by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Is there any other discussion?
I would just like to, Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank everyone on your staff, on your team,
I know.
for what you do, because it's a hard job,
Absolutely.
but you do a big job. Thank you.
Do you want me to do a report too?
Yeah, we'll
Same.
take a picture first after it's been approved.
Okay.
Same here. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll take a
All
picture.
the time.
Maybe Jackie, if you just wanna go behind there and you guys wanna sit down?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever you want. Matters not.
Aye.
You just kind of squeeze that.
I gotta sit that close. to
Brian,
you.
I think you should get into it because you're an important, why don't you go stand up by Jackie?
Move over when it's over.
Your office is a critical part of this, Brian. Go ahead. Come on. Come on.
Big-
Yeah, that was my next question. Director.
It'll
Okay, I'm gonna push this
It'll
down.
work.
Watch your glasses.
I have everyone ready.
Okay.
Smile. Perfect.
Outstanding.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. I don't think she's gone.
Good job.
No, now we
No,
gotta do
she's
some
gone.
stuff on.
She's not gonna just stop in here and leave right away. She's
We're not
staying.
gonna let her leave, heck no.
No,
Heck,
I'm
oh, here they come now. So here are all the staff.
We should really take another picture.
We should really take another
Yeah, I'd
picture.
like
We've
that.
got time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on in.
We've
I would
got
like to-
time.
Timing is everything.
Move over, boys. Come
We
on.
like the last one, that good. We'll do it
That's
again.
Brian, you still have to stay up there.
Yeah, come on up, Brian.
Go-
Brian,
go
you
behind-
can
go
do
behind
it.
the ladies. If you wanna go behind them.
Oh, behind there, okay. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Good morning.
We're getting kinda
Good morning.
lazy.
Good morning.
I have to get behind Commissioner Jelinski.
Of course you
We're
do.
teasing him that this would be.
Yeah, it goes right over my head. It's all right. It's okay. I can take it.
Just don't give them rabbit
I've known Jeff a long time.
Ready, smile. Good.
Excellent. Thank you all
We
very,
did-
very
we did.
kindly.
Maybe if
Thank you
you ladies
guys
just
for all
want to
the work
introduce
you did.
yourselves.
Thank you.
I'm Angel Tresco.
She's a support enforcement aide. She's the newest member of our staff,
Cool.
about 2 years. Go ahead.
Deb Whippler.
She does non-child support related collections, 35 years.
Andrew Loscheider.
15 years? No.
She's 15 years old.
15 years old, yes.
She is the official embryo.
Much anymore.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
And Juliet Kerr?
Yep, and I'm a support enforcement aide.
Cool, okay.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very
Timing
kindly.
is everything. Thank you, Leanne, for coming in. So, given it is Child Support Awareness Month, Jackie did put together a report about the activities of her office in 2016 and 17, so.
Yes. Yeah, so good morning all. As I mentioned to you, that governor also did a similar proclamation this year. And so one of the things I wanted to do was just tell you a teeny bit about what he had done. This year, for the first time in Minnesota, along with Child Support Awareness Month, the state did a statewide activity. And what they did is they notified 11,857 payers of support who had made at least one payment in the last year, but still had a suspended driver's license for non-payment of support. They sent out letters to all of those people and offered them the opportunity, and we as county workers were to talk with them as they contacted us to see if we couldn't work out some sort of resolution that would allow them to get their driver's license back and continue on with payment of support. There was 122 letters that went to our county individually, and I know of about 10 contacts for sure, and I haven't heard if there's more. I haven't asked about more. So it was an interesting project, and we'll know probably in another 30 to 45 days the results of that, but they did do something statewide this year, and that was to help to get licenses reinstated. So that was exciting, just to hear that they did something on a grander scale. So now we'll dive into what's up here. And this is just a report. It's kind of similar to what I've told you in the past, and talk about primarily what's on the right side, which is the most recent information. Year-to-date collections, of course, child support operates on a fiscal year, so the totals aren't calendar year, but the total in there for year-to-date collections for 2017 is $3,772,000. What I did is I looked at the average collections over the last so many months and projected and added those numbers in for the last 2 months of the fiscal quarter, or the fiscal year. And I'm pretty comfortable saying that I think our collections will be up another 2% this year from last year, so that's wonderful. We have this year, right now, our current caseload size is 1,868 cases. It's down a teeny bit. Our cases over the last 3-4 years have been kind of declining a little bit due to welfare reform and not having the medical referrals. And then I think we're getting to a point where some of the baby boomer generations and the larger families are kind of fading out, and so when you only have 2 children, the cases aren't lasting as long and different things. So I think we're starting to see a little trend maybe around that too. Our cases for the current year are 1,739 of them are non-public assistance. That means they're not receiving MFIP. Only 157 of the cases that we have are receiving MFIP, and we get all referrals on all MFIP cases, so that would be a number on the public assistance, and fairly close. That would be the number of people actually receiving a cash assistance grant anymore. Our caseload types currently come from public assistance cases of 157. 953 of those cases were on public assistance at one time but are no longer there, which is a good number. And 786 of them have been people that applied that have never been on assistance. And so, you can see the vast majority of our cases now are different in that most people that are having our services done are not receiving cash grants, and they're getting income on their own and receiving their direct child support as support.
And again, this is probably the most basic self-sufficiency program that we run. In terms of keeping kids and families together, so.
I don't have that in the report here, but we average about $3,000 a year per household that we collect child support for. So I think it's a good sum of money to help those families with their kids. I We have court going on upstairs this morning, so some of my staff was missing. But of the 7 people that we had here today, of the 7 people that work in our unit altogether, they collect on average $636,000 a year. And so I think their salaries are well worth what they are doing. We have 5 federal performance measures that we have to meet. Those are at the lower bottom. And the ones on the right that are pink for you, I highlighted those because those are the ones that are showing where we are meeting the federal performance standard. That's in the paternities established and orders established, as well as cost effectiveness. The 2 categories where we don't meet the federal performance measure is collections of current support and arrears. There are very few counties in the state of Minnesota that meet those measures, both of them, because it's a difficult standard to reach. And as you can see from last year to this year, we're improving, and I think that number for this year, in 2 more months at the end of the fiscal year, will be a little bit higher than it is now. But we are continuing to improve, and that's a good thing. And the state kind of monitors us in the area of collections, and if we aren't improving, they will place the county in a performance improvement plan. And so as long as we're continuing to improve at the rate they are looking for, we do fine. And we didn't have a performance improvement plan next year, and I'm anticipating not this year again, so that's good.
Jackie, if I may interrupt you.
Sure.
The $637 that you collect, is that money you're collecting that people aren't paying and you have to go out and collect it? Or is that money
No.
that the court requires and they are paying, you're just collecting it?
We're just collecting it.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I
it's
mean,
not like all bad debt that you're
No.
looking for? Okay,
No, some
okay.
of it are those people who don't pay, but that's about 10% of the caseload. The
Okay.
rest of it is either done through withholding, or maybe they voluntarily pay, or maybe we get tax refund money.
Okay.
Yep, that kind of thing. It's a
you.
combination, sure. And then the state also has its own human services performance management system in place. And there are 4 categories that they look for: outcomes 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then right below that shows what the child support measure is. We don't have a measure in outcome 1. Outcome 2, our current measure is 80% of current support paid. Morrison County is highlighted in the gray, and to the left, it's the state average. 90% of open cases in paternity have to have an established order. We're meeting that standard, and currently, and we have in the past. And the measure for the state is off to the right. And then the 90% of our open child support cases have to have an order that's actually in place and collectible. And so if you look across the chart, we're meeting that standard, and we're meeting it above at the state average. So we're doing okay there. Last couple things I have, one of them is to talk a little bit about the Father's Resource Program. Is it 3 years, Brad, or 2?
I think at least 3.
2 or 3, yeah, that we've now been participating with the Father's Resource Program. And it's been in my opinion and my staff's, it's been a really nice addition, and I think the courts are fond of having that service available. What they do is they're a group that works, they call themselves, they're part of the Mojave-Otwa Community Action Program, and they refer to their department as the Father's Resource Center. They will meet with obligors who have questions regarding child support, changing custody and parenting time, changing just custody. They will meet and talk with them to determine if they can help them with the pro se paperwork, meaning they don't need to have an attorney help them, so that way they can get into court and have their issues addressed. And so since January, they've had 53 contacts by people that have cases connected to Morrison County. 42 of them were with regard to child support, and 11 were with regard to custody and parenting time. They had 15 appointments. They don't always have to see everybody, though. They had 15 appointments regarding child support and 5 regarding custody and parenting time. And they actually filed motions on behalf of 13 people in the child support area and 4 in the custody and parenting time area. So people really like their services, and when someone has questions and just want help with filling out papers themselves, they also call and can get through it, so it's a nice thing to do. And then the last kind of addresses your question, Commissioner Wilson. Where does the money that we collect come from, that $3 million, that $600,000 figure? This is showing the dollars collected from the different areas that we get money. Withholding is 81% of the money, so that withholding includes payments from employers as well as tax offsets. So that's all coming to us that way. We do have a few cases that go out of state because the payer of the support is out of Minnesota, so we have to ask the other state to collect for us. We get about 7% of our collections from other states. We get 11% by direct payment, and that's the amount of cash payments that come into our agency each year that are receipted. And then there's odd collections, like maybe from a contempt, and there's money that's forwarded down from court, or just some different kind of unique circumstances, and that amounts to about 1% of where our money comes. So I think that, not only do we need to recognize the staff that do this work, but I think it's important to put the word out to dads that we know that they are doing what they're supposed to do. And our job is not about, trying to punish or collect from them. We know they're responsible because the numbers show we're getting that money, and that it is a small percentage of people that we really do have to kind of put the hammer to a little bit to do those collections. And so that's what I have to update you with today.
Again, child support's a federally required program for every state to have, and in Minnesota, it's county administered, so we do it here. And it is one of the programs that is funded at about a 60 to 65% federal match, just across the board on every cost that we have associated with child support. So whether it be staff or equipment or anything of that nature. So. But again, as I said earlier, this is one of the most basic self-sufficiency programs to try and keep people off of financial assistance, and the staff do a great job of that. And also, just to shout out to the county attorney's office, who's an important partner in the work that we do in this particular program. So,
Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chair, I just have one question. And I think I got it, but I just want to make sure.
Sure.
Fiscal year 2017,
Yep.
you're collecting about $3.7 million.
Yep.
Is that really all ordered from the court to begin with?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
and most
Very good.
people
I
are
get it.
required to go through child support
Yep.
in a dissolution.
Yep.
Thank
And
you.
so,
Yep.
it isn't something they can
Yeah. Unless they.
choose. It's not a choice, really, for most
Yep.
people who are in a dissolution.
Yep.
Very good. Okay,
Okay.
thank
Thank
you.
you
Have a
very
great
much.
day. Thank you all.
you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
All right, I have a couple of other things, and I did not do a very good job of an app extender in selecting all of the proper areas on any of these reports, so they're all over the place. But this is actually a public health request for a change of ownership for the Dairy Queen in Royalton. And so looking for approval from,
So moved. Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
thank you. The second one you have in front of you, which they came in late last week to, or it might have even been yesterday, to request a one-day temporary on-sale liquor license for a fundraiser that the Morrison County Area Foundation holds at the hangar in Camp Ripley. So it requires a one-day on-sale liquor license.
I would so move on that, Mr. Chair.
Got a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
The next thing on the agenda is a request to approve the 2 student members of the Morrison County Public Health Advisory Committee. As you might recall, this advisory committee meets about 8 times per year. Commissioner Lemire is the county board representative, and we meet next Wednesday on August 30th. And so I'm looking for approval for the 2 new student members as the others have graduated.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Zelinski. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. The next thing on your agenda is a request to appoint me as the Public Health and Social Services Director for Morrison County. And as you might recall, the Public Health Director submitted her resignation and left in the beginning of June. And as a result of that, the Commissioners asked myself and Administrator Deb Gruber to assess what is the best structure for our county as it relates to public health and social services. And so I have in your packet a couple of handouts, one specifically describes the contacts that were made by me as the social service director. So we really appreciate, I guess, the time and commitment the board gave us to take a look at how we should manage both organizations. I did come into it thinking that one director over both organizations was the best fit. I don't think in any of my contacts with individuals across the state that it changed that perspective. I will say that it's a challenging conversation when you lose a leader of an organization. That organization feels a loss, and we want to pay attention to that. However, I do think that when somebody leaves, we also take that opportunity to see if there are better ways to manage an organization. And so I went and visited two different counties, Todd County and Kanabec County. I chose those two counties because they are members of South Country Health Alliance, and they consider themselves different structures. One would consider them an integrated health and human services, and the other would consider themselves two separate agencies with one director. However, as I've looked at both, really I think when you talk about integrated versus one director over two, I don't know that there's a lot of difference. Both organizations have financial requirements, both on the state, federal, and grant level, that require different books. And so I do know that there are some health and human service agencies that have combined their books and find that it works well, but I think in my conversations with a couple of these directors, keeping them separate makes the most sense given the grant-based formulas that are used in public health and how social services is funded through state and federal time study dollars. So we want to be cautious to make sure that we do not mix the financial pots, as we might say. Currently, 37 counties are combined in some way, shape, or form. 11 public health agencies are not part of the county, but are either joint powers or run by a hospital. One public health agency is actually run by a hospital in Hubbard County. And so, you know, what I'm here to say today, I think, is that it would make the most sense to have two separate agencies with one director with a flat management structure. As you look at the two handouts, in working with Deb Gruber, we estimate that this should save in the area of $30,000 to $60,000. What we would do is invest more in the supervisory level and those that really support the staff in the organizations. And my philosophy has been is that having a flat management structure with everybody having some equal responsibility, even though they are at different grades and supervise different programs, I think it takes a team to manage the staff and support them in the work that they do. I think it's also been a philosophy of this board as they've gone into looking at how this building should be reconstructed and remodeled in a way that fits customer service better, that it fits in that philosophy that the board has put forth as we consider the remodel of our government services center. It's similar to what Land Services has done. And so I guess that's where we are at today. As I said, I've visited two different counties. I've talked with 5 other county folks. I've spoken to the Minnesota Department of Health, and I've spoke to the 2 leadership individuals who manage the local Public Health Association and Minnesota Association of County Social Service Administrators. I do think both organizations are important to the mission of Morrison County. Public health generally is about all health for everybody within the county. Social services usually has mandates and are serving a specific populations. However, I think we both are critical and need each other to do our jobs. This provides more flexibility as we move forward in terms of if people leave to evaluate structures, supervision, job functions. Are there areas that we can be more efficient? It does not mean that in this process, and it will not mean that anybody would lose their job because of a structure change such as this. Again, this is about moving forward and looking at efficiencies moving forward, working better together to meet the needs of the customers within Morrison County. And I think that's the other critical message is that as you look at that structure, and I said this last week at planning as we had a long conversation about this, that really I'm probably the least important person in that structure. It is those 10 people below that really supervise, support, and develop programs that meet the needs of our community. And so, as you can see in that handout, that is the one that really describes some of the differences that might happen financially. The other thing we did talk about last Tuesday is, as you know, Michelle Tauges has submitted her resignation, going on to bigger and better things. So again, that's an opportunity to look at that position, and as you see, the other three supervisors, actually Penny, I believe, has 18 staff in that, within her structure. But as you can see, the mix of staff among supervisors, there's a variation. And irregardless of changes within organizations, I do think that in terms of the staff that the other three supervise, we have to take a look at that and pay attention to that. So, but I do think with Michelle leaving, we would take a look at that position and see if there's a way between four supervisors that we can adjust programs and staff in a way that better supports what we are doing. The other thing that Michelle does is her McKick coordinator, and that's a .7 position. So we would look at doing McKick coordination a little bit differently. I've reached out to the superintendents and the other members of the executive committee of McKick and see if we can't do something a little different with that, and they're supportive of whatever we need to do to manage the county work. So they were open to that. However, that is what some of the salary, what we were paying the previous director would go to then would be to add some of that supervision time back into Michelle paid for through county dollars. The McKick dollars are paid for through a collaborative time study and is not any county dollars. So that would probably be the first thing we would look at, and I've not done anything with that position at this point because I would like to talk with Cindy, Penny, and Melanie about how the four supervisors should be structured, the programs they should manage, the staff they should manage, those types of things. And so this recommendation does not come with any request to do anything with Michelle's position, and that would come back hopefully either at the next planning meeting or a planning meeting after that to make sure that we are thoughtful in planning and preparing for that departure. So she is done on Thursday. We will be able to manage the work she's done and be able to manage the work of McKick while we're in this kind of change. So again, my recommendation, and Deb Gruber was, as you know, was here last Tuesday and all supported that recommendation that we would appoint me as the Social Service and Public Health Director for Morrison County.
Could I get a motion to approve Brad as public health?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Second.
We got a motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Brad, and everyone else, this is not the first day we talked about this. That I think we need to make very perfectly clear that we beat this one pretty well. And you've done a lot of exercising in this one, you truly have. What you just got done saying was, to me, was a team approach from 2017 and beyond. And anytime that we lose people, we always try and look at the position and say, is there a better way of doing business? It's not that it's not a good way of doing business today, but is there a better way? And I thoroughly support that structure. When people leave, we just have to see what we can do. And maybe sometimes we find out that that's not enough, we need more. I don't know, but we have to take a look at it. So with that team approach of bringing everyone together, and I like to think of it as 2017 and beyond, it's a new day. I fully support it.
Anybody else have any questions? I support this too. The only thing that I always look at is that our clients are taken care of. When the day is done, no matter how we manage things, we need to take care of our clients. And
Yeah.
if I think that we're falling backwards on that, we'll probably have another discussion. But I mean, I think that's what we have to be looking out here for, is that our clients are being taken care of and they're not falling behind on things. So,
And I think, Commissioner Wilson, one of the things that we've learned in this process too is that we serve some of the same clients. You know, as we sit here, they're going from one end of the building to the other. I also think it will help both of our organizations have a better understanding of what each of us do to serve the community, because we, again, have different missions to some degree, but they also are intertwined. And I think it's important that each organization will have the opportunity now moving forward to have a better understanding of what we do so we can do it better together, I think is kind of the motto we want to look at.
thank you. Okay, if there's no more discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Brad. for
Thank you.
taking on
Have a
that
good day.
responsibility. Okay, public health we're done with. City of Little Falls, Greg, how are you today?
Good, and yourself?
Good.
Greg, good morning.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So this morning, we're talking about the airport. In front of you have the FAA grant component of it, or the grant form. The FAA would be contributing up to $208,030 for our pavement rehabilitation out there. As you know, we are looking towards doing the crosswind runway. In order for us to be in a position to get additional grant funds for that construction, we have to take care of the pavement that we have out there currently. And so this is kind of the path to get that completed. So today, we are asking for board approval to execute the grant in the amount of $208,030. The City of Little Falls last night approved that as well, and so now the last component of it would be the county's approval as well.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by, I'll second it. Any further discussion? Not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Greg, that's pretty simple.
You could have texted us with
Come
that
again.
one. Okay. Court Administrators Report.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
This one won't be as quick.
Good to see you. Hi. I mentioned
Just
last
teasing.
year, yeah, I mentioned last year we were consolidating guardianship conservatorship cases. And we've expanded, so now here in Morrison County, we cover Douglas, Todd, Morrison, Becker, Wadena, and we're taking on Stearns after September 1st. So my push for that was, I have a part-time person, I'm now making that part-time full-time, because we're taking all that on. So I'm trying to keep the work here and the staff here. That's my kind of goal. The other thing, though, some of the work went over to Douglas as far as the civil case processing, because they couldn't do all that and all that, So I'm trying to centralize my 3 counties to keep staff in Douglas, Todd, and Morrison. And it's going pretty good so far. It's a learning curve. The other update is jurors coming in can now sign in electronically. We received a kiosk where they'll type in their name, it'll verify their address, phone number, mileage, and then it'll go right to our system. So there's not as much manual concern as far as us typing something wrong, them not being paid right, those type of things. So that'll be intuitive. Hopefully it works. And they'll get paid. Otherwise, we really don't have anything going on in court administration. I think I
Anybody have any
mentioned,
questions for
When,
us?
Mr. Chair, when we talk court administration, Rhonda, I think it's kind of important. Who pays court administration?
state of Minnesota,
Thank you.
the judicial branch. We have the judicial branch budget pays.
Yep. So your employees are state employees?
Correct.
Yep.
I think
Work
that's,
here,
I think
but
that's a good comment, I think everybody out there thinks that everybody that works at the courthouse is paid for by the taxpayers.
Right.
And really, that isn't, there's a lot of money that comes in with different programs to administer these things, so I think that is an important factor.
You have about 8 employees or so up in Little Falls here?
Correct. Yep,
About 8?
8.
Okay.
And I have 5 in Todd and 9 in Douglas.
Okay.
Then do you end up spending time also in Stearns County? Do you personally spend time in
No.
Stearns also?
Nope.
Okay.
The court administrator there is George Locke, and he is only Stearns County.
Okay.
Court administrator.
Okay. Okay.
But speaking on that we are state, I do want to thank you always for including us in the county functions, everything that goes on. And I don't say I thank you enough about that, but we do appreciate it. Even though we're state, we just don't want to feel like we're not
Well,
part
you're
of the
part of the
team.
operation.
Yeah, you're part of everything,
Yeah.
yes. It's just nice when people understand really how things are funded.
Yeah.
They believe because they're in this building that their tax dollars completely fund this stuff.
Right.
And there's a lot of organizations in here that are funded through state and federal money.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions of me?
Good information.
Thank you.
Rhonda, stop by anytime.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Great River Regional Library. Karen,
Morning.
how are you today?
Morning.
Good, how are you?
Good morning.
Morning.
I have with me our accounting and distribution supervisor, Aaron Murphy. You may remember him from last year. He has a slightly different title as of last month, so.
I've had 3.
So this morning, we'd like to give you a little overview of library activities and then an update on our 2018 budget plans. So Great River Regional Library is our 6-county library system. We cover Todd, Morrison, Benton, Sherburne, Wright, and Stearns. And our headquarters is in St. Cloud, but we have 32 physical locations across the region. We have 5 of them here in Morrison County. Little Falls, Pierce, Swanville, Upsala, and Royalton each have their own buildings. Little Falls is the biggest of the 5, and that's right here in town. So if you haven't stopped by, feel free to do that at any point. They're open 48 hours a week, so I think it's 43 actually. 43 hours a week, so definitely lots of opportunities for people to stop by. Here in Morrison County, we have 8,100 borrowers. That is someone who has used their library card actively at least once in the last 3 years to check out materials. There are a number of services we offer that don't require a library card, like coming to a program, including our legacy programs, and also using the wireless internet access, which is something that's growing pretty substantially. We had over 97,000 visits just in the 5 libraries in Morrison County last year, and almost 200,000 items checked out in those 5 libraries. Overall circulation is pretty flat year over year for most of our locations, but we are starting to see an increase in a number of our smaller locations in particular. Pierce is a pretty growing community when it comes to library use, and Royalton is starting to see an uptick in activity as well.
Mr. Chair, Karen, if you don't mind me to interrupt, and if you're
Sure,
going to cover
no.
this, just say so. But maybe it would be good to say, what does it take to get a library card?
Oh, sure.
Would it be good to say that?
Yeah,
So, explain what
it's
that
a
is.
completely free service. As a public library in the state of Minnesota, we're actually required to provide most of our basic services for free. To get a library card, you need to provide proof of residency if you're over 17. So that is simple as your driver's license or a photo ID with an electric bill or something like that if you're new to town. And then kids can get a library card without ID, so they can just come in and sign up. If they're with a daycare, they don't need a parent with them. It's a pretty seamless process. Within the state of Minnesota, we actually have a reciprocal borrowing compact with all of the other 11 regional library systems across the state. So if you're traveling, you can use your Great River card at any library within the state of Minnesota. You just need to show them your library card and they'll get you signed up, and you can borrow materials there as well. So if you're a non-resident here in the region, you can use your Hennepin County card if you're at the lake, at the Little Falls Library, or wherever you might be. The other thing that you can do is if you're from out of state, so say you're from California and you need to get library access, we offer a non-resident card. It's good for 3 months and it's $7.50. So lots of different ways to
In
get
other
a card.
words, for the state of Minnesota, we're talking Morrison County predominantly right here. There's no charge for this.
Correct.
There's
Completely
no
free.
charge for coming and using the internet.
Right.
Very good.
Right.
Thank you.
That's one of our basic philosophies as a public library, and it's some of that state mandated. All right. The next page shows you one of our major initiatives from last year was overhauling the website and the catalog. In the past, you couldn't really access it well on a tablet or a smartphone, and we're finding more and more people are actually accessing library services online and with a device other than a laptop or a desktop computer. So we spent a lot of time updating that so it's much easier to use. I also have with me our annual report from last year. And if you turn to page 2, you will see our faithful commissioner, Randy Wincher, on page 2. He is on the Great River Board, as well as all of the other Board of Trustees. And this gives you an overview of all of the activities last year. But on page 7, you can see one of the additions to the region last year were brain fitness kits. A number of our communities have focused on Alzheimer's awareness, and they received some federal grants for that. Through the level of donations, we were able to add something called brain fitness kits that are available for checkout at all of our libraries, and they provide special games that enhance memory function, and they're not, Candyland. They're things like story cubes that really get you thinking in new ways, and that's on page 7. And this is something we're continuing to expand as we get donations in, and they're available for checkout, so you might not be able to find them on the shelf if you go to Little Falls or Royalton, but you can request them if you need to. They are pretty popular. On page 8, you can see an overview of regional services. It also gives you an overview of the Great River budget over the last 2 years. Over roughly 69% of our funds come from county budget shares, and about 16 to 17% comes from state tax dollars. Regional Library Basic System Support is our major operating line from the state. Last year, there was some legislative activity to increase that total funding and make the formula for Regional Library Basic System Support more stable. However, that did not move forward in the E12 finance budget. So we will be looking at trying to refresh that activity in the next couple of years. That being said, we do not yet know what our state dollars will be for fiscal year 18, but through our joint powers agreement, we have to have our budget set by August 1st. So we did our best guess and are estimating we will see another decrease in regional library basic system support this year, primarily because the equalization factor is the most volatile, and we receive funding for all 6 counties under that factor right now. As the economy improves, we expect we will lose funding, especially for the larger counties in the south. That hasn't happened yet, but that's the trend on the state level, because the total amount for libraries at the state level hasn't changed since 2009. The funding between the systems has, based on population and tax capacity primarily. So do you have any questions about the overall high-level picture, and then we'll dig in a little bit about how we set the budget for 18 and where that will be going.
So did I just, Mr. Chair, did I just hear you say, Karen, there's a decrease?
We don't know
I
yet,
like
but
that.
we expect the state funding will decrease.
State funding, not
state
necessarily
funding,
county funding.
Not necessarily county funding,
Okay,
no.
That's why your county funding went up.
okay.
That's where we're going, yes.
Kind of thought there was something going on there, but all right.
Well,
very good.
and keep in mind now, within the joint powers agreement between the 6 counties, there's three formula factors in how the budget is set. It's based on borrower numbers, adjusted or net tax capacity, and population. So as those factors shift, even if the budget stays flat for Great River, the amounts shift between the counties, and we saw a lot of that happening this year. So, do you want me to start here, or do you want to go ahead?
Oh, I can.
Okay.
One thing that's new for what was new in 2017 is the base budgeting process that we adopted from a model of Benton counties. And basically what it is it provides an overall estimate of providing services at a status quo level, meaning no changes. It also allows our board to assess the fiscal condition and make necessary adjustments to the budget from the prior year. Let's see here. On the next page here, the 2018 budget is an overall 1.1% overall increase. Morrison County's was 2.5. That was mainly due to your tax capacity growing from 29,795,000 to 30,433,000. So when the dollars go in, it shifts due to that tax capacity, as Karen mentioned before, as one of the factors.
It was a strange year this year in that all 6 counties increased, but because the percentage share increased differently, it shifted the dollars in ways we were not anticipating. So Stearns County went up, but not enough to offset the shift to Morrison County this year.
So overall, the county signatories, I wanted to point out, is 78% of our revenue. And we thank you very much for your support on that. Other types of revenue that we have are a St. Cloud reimbursement. That is a lease agreement we have with the city. That could possibly be changing, but I'm not sure.
It probably won't for
Probably
next
won't
year.
for next year. So what that is they pay a portion of the custodial costs. And then we also have regional library basic system support, which is 16% of our budget, and I believe Karen already mentioned that we're looking at a decrease for that. And then the rest is fines and miscellaneous, which those are what we collect through revenue recapture, and also the fine threshold being lowered so people have to pay their fines before they can check out.
So the next page shows you a little bit about how much each county pays for library service per capita in relation to the overall Great River budget and state average for state library service. So you can see where Morrison County falls within the counties. I can say part of the reason yours is higher is you do have a higher percentage of your residents using the library, and it's likely because you have 5 locations for a county your size. So know that that's driving that number. Overall, Great River's receiving about $19.60 per capita for the entire region between all funding sources. That compares with a $38.98 state average. So in terms of dollars provided per capita, we're definitely on the more efficient side.
On this next slide, it shows a graph from 2009 to 2018, the county signatory shares. Morrison County is the second from the bottom there. It's kind of hard to see, but when you look at it on a graph of this scale, I'm sorry.
Yep, you're the second from the bottom.
Oh, I see on that scale,
Yep, it's the
okay.
red one, yep.
It's kinda
Oh, I
hard
see
to
what you're
s-
saying. You're looking at the
I
table.
was looking at
Yeah.
the table, yep.
Yeah.
It appears that the Morrison County has remained relatively flat. As you can see from the numbers, it fluctuated quite a bit from 2009 to 2012, and then slightly increased over the next 5-6 years. On the next slide, this
Just a
drills.
breakout of
It's a
that.
drill down of just Morrison County, as you can see where it took a dip, and then it has steadily risen since 2012.
So the 2 pieces of the budget that are going up for next year, the board did approve through the base budgeting process an increase to collection, which will deliver more electronic and physical materials across the region, and then also an increase to program pool, which will deliver more time to each library to do outreach to schools and other community groups who can't necessarily get to the library. So there were 2 increases independent of the base budget that were approved this year.
When you said increase to collection, you mean collection of material?
Right, not
collection
collections
money.
of bills,
Okay,
right.
okay. Well, that's what I
Right,
thought you meant.
right, yeah, it's jargon from the library.
We'll try to do that too.
Right. I think one of our biggest challenges with the collection in particular is that digital services demand for that continues to increase, and it's a more expensive type of service to deliver. People expect an ebook to cost less, but that's not necessarily true, because as a library, a $10 book you can get through Amazon, we have to pay for the rights through that subscription. It may cost up to $90. So a different type of service, but we can't ignore the core of services we're offering right now. So we appreciate your support. I recognize this is probably not what you were hoping that I would be coming with a message, but do know that we've been working really hard to try to keep that budget as flat as possible. It's difficult when nearly 80% of the budget goes just for staff salaries alone.
Sounds good. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
All
Yeah,
right,
thank
thank
you.
you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Till next time.
Yes. You should know Randy does a great job on our board.
Good
Does a
thing
lot
that
of
you
them.
said that.
He does, he
He does
represents
do
your
a good
county
job.
very well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Enjoy your
much.
week.
Sheriff's report.
Morning,
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Morning, Sheriff.
So today we have Victoria Ingram with, who's our communications supervisor and our emergency manager. So once I get to the report, I just wanted her to highlight a couple things as to what's going on with our emergency management and our dispatch. But before we start, I think we have a couple items. I don't know which item we want first. Looks like our server, correct? Okay. So 1 week ago, I was here in front of the board and we talked about updating our server, which is through L3 Mobile Vision. And I'm requesting to update that server. And of course, that's the server that houses all of our squad audio and video footage. The one that we currently have is at its end of life. So we discussed that at length. I'm looking at utilizing our jail reserve fund, which is a reserve. And I'm looking at getting formal approval to use up to $42,000 from that fund.
Could I get a motion?
I'd make that motion for more discussion.
Got a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion?
Question I have, Sheriff, and you explained this very well last week, but when you, this program or, that we're using, how does that work? Like you mentioned something about you back the squads in, and could you take it from there and kind of explain that?
Sure. So right now, we have 2 points that actually are, they're called waypoints, and they're on our building. And it's like Wi-Fi signal. When our squad car comes in range, it automatically downloads those squad videos to our server. And right now, since our server's at its end of life, it's not really downloading the way it's supposed to be. So what happens is we have to go in manually to each squad car, grab the SD card, and download that onto our computers. And of course, this day of age, with any critical incident that may occur, we know that we need to replace this server and hopefully not have those issues anymore. So, if that makes any sense.
Very well,
Sean, when
thank
you say end of life, from what I've gathered before is, a lot of times these things are getting old enough that there's no support
Correct.
for them anymore. Is that kind of what we're looking at? Or is the equipment just old and you can't get replacements? I'm sure technology's so much greater.
Yep, so, Mr. Chair, it's a mixture of both. What happens is Sergeant Rexton overlooks this camera system. So I told him to contact the vendor, L3 Mobile Vision, and see if this is something we can add on to the server versus replacing the entire server. And what they said is being at its end of life and the capacity that it actually can hold, there's no adding on to this current server. Our only option would be A, buy a new server and make sure that it's big enough in terms of if we ever have to go to, or if we ever decide to go to like body cams, there's gonna be extra data and footage that this would hold and retain everything, and we're gonna have no issues. But yes, that was an option we looked at, and our answer was no, there's no adding on to the server.
Sounds good.
Sheriff, how long have you had this server?
Since 2012, and they say that it's usually a 5-year, it's good for 5 years.
And Mr. Chair, Sheriff, the new one you're anticipating is a 5-year end of life also.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Yep, this is roll call. Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
And I. Thank you.
So our next thing in front of the board should be our monthly report for the month of July. So I'll just kind of explain the photos. I like to add photos and kind of let people know what's going on in the community, what we've been up to. So the first one is Piers Freedom Fest. Of course, we had our own security crew, or our own law enforcement officials that assisted at the ballpark in Genola. Of course, they had Neil McCoy and they had Blackhawk. And there you can see that some of our guys got a photo with the lead singer of Blackhawk. Of course, now I can't remember his name, so help me out, somebody. Blackhawk fans? Okay. The second photo, this one is very unique, and it seems like in today's society, we hear a lot of negativity. And law enforcement, of course, we don't get too many calls that say, hey, you guys did a great job. Because we just don't get those calls of service. Here's a young gentleman, he was 3 years old, and it was Lake Alec. He had his life jacket on, and he was playing on a water trampoline. And what happened is he actually got pinned underneath that water trampoline. So parents were able to pull him out, and he was unresponsive, and we get the 911 call. Unresponsive 3-year-old Lake Alec who was pinned underneath the water trampoline. So this occurred Lake Alec, like I said. So we had the first response team and fire department from Lake Alec. We had Gold Cross Ambulance. We had Morrison County Sheriff's Office deputies. We had Lifelink. And the beginning of the call, it started from a dispatcher who took that call. So we got all these different entities and parties involved. Well, this kid's life was saved, and the parents reach out to us almost exactly a year later, because this incident happened July 30th of 2016. So the mother reached out and said, we would like to thank all the first responders and everybody involved in this call. So we actually met at the Scandia Valley Town Hall, and we got people who were associated with the call. Unfortunately, our dispatcher was advised of this, wasn't able to make it, and Lifelink 3 was also advised of this, and they weren't able to make it. But everyone else was able to. And just a kind of a positive ending. Not only did these guys, these heroes, save the kid's life, but the parents reached out and wanted to thank us as well, which I thought it was worthwhile
Pretty cool.
sharing.
Pretty cool.
Next picture, just things that we do in the community. It's not all strictly just law enforcement enforcing the laws. We like to do a little positive interaction with the community. This gentleman's Mike Garland. His daughter is actually Rachel Zimmerman, a dispatcher for us. And we were notified that he's pretty much on a mission. He's starting at the headwaters and going all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, taking the Mississippi River canoeing the entire way. And he's raising awareness for Relay for Life and cancer awareness. So I think it's planned out where this is like a 3-month journey for him. This was day 14. He just happened to be coming through, and we were advised that he was coming through, so we wanted to show him our support. We helped him with this little short portage, and then we were back on our way to our duty. So just thought I'd share that with the board. We had our 43 annual REC, which stands for Residents Encountering Christ. That was successful. I believe we had 24 inmates who started this program, and it's a weekend program. And of course, it's volunteers coming in, donating their time, their materials. 24 inmates started and 23 completed. That means that once they started this, they came through its entirety. So to only lose one inmate, that's pretty successful. So we just wanted to share that. We want to continue those rec programs as well. The last one, it's just a rolling tribute to fallen law enforcement officers. This is a semi-rig. It's owned by Jake and Stephanie Robeck. Stephanie works for the Melrose Police Department part-time. She's also a dispatcher for the Sheriff's Office part-time. In this case, this was at the Swanville Carnival. They were able to come through the parade, and we took some photos. And it's crazy to see something like this. The amount of time and money they had to spend on this rig. There's 3,700 names on the deck that were scribed in of fallen peace officers. So from 1996 to current, it's all the officers in the United States who have lost their life as a peace officer. From the beginning of time to current, all Minnesota peace officers' names are scribed on that deck as well. So, of course, we're looking at a picture of it says it's a badge from St. Joseph. That's Officer Brian Kleinfelter, who lost his life, and I think we all remember what happened there. So we just wanted to show that that's out in public, and it's nice of Stephanie and her husband to donate that, especially to the community. And National Night Out, it was there, and I'm thinking maybe they might be involved in the Piers Oktoberfest parade as well. But it's good to see the support. So moving on, I'm just going to go through our report and just kind of highlight a few things, and then I was going to let Victoria speak, as you guys are probably getting sick of listening to me. So our number of complaints, you can see it's gone up. I'll explain later why that number's gone up. But our total number of complaints, 1,068. You can see we got a 73% clearance rate, 95 cases cleared out of 130 for our criminal complaints. Moving down to our drug investigations, I'm always asking our guys, what are they up to? What's going on in the drug world? So currently, there's been sales of heroin that they're monitoring, running informants. Informants are buying drugs from dealers. There's sales of heroin, there's sales of methamphetamine, and there are also current sales of narcotic pills that they're working. So I'm gonna try and explain these numbers, and then I'm gonna explain what's going on with VOTIF, that's the Violent Offender Task Force. They look at VOTIF as their own police department. So basically, starting now, they have a new records management system, meaning that instead of our guys pulling a case number here locally, if our case agent is here local and works for Morrison County Sheriff's Office, and the incident where they're buying drugs from is in St. Cloud and/or outside of our jurisdiction, VOTIF is actually pulling an ICR number, which used to be here locally. So what I'm getting at is, moving forward, I think it's good for the board to know what's going on here locally as far as, especially if our task force officers are working outside of this jurisdiction, because they have informants that can buy from other people. So moving forward, I'm gonna get statistics that just show VOTIF and gives kind of a breakdown of what our guys are doing here, plus what are they doing outside of the county as well. But for this month, just because this is a new system and they just shifted to it, I was just gonna go over some of these numbers. We had 1 controlled buy. We had 1 controlled substance agency assist. It says 1 possession of methamphetamine, 3 possessions of marijuana. So now I looked at the VOTIF side of things. They actually had 6 other assists that aren't marked on here because of the new system. And they also told me they're active with sales of heroin, like I explained before, sales of methamphetamine, which is buying heroin and methamphetamine and narcotic pills. Now, the reasons we don't have the numbers for that is because this might be the same person we're buying from multiple times. So of course, there's only gonna be 1 incident. Our training, we had 23 officers attend shotgun qual, and then we have a backup weapon qual. That's just everybody that carries handguns. Maybe you're off duty and you wanna conceal it, you still have to qualify with that weapon as well. Our criminal complaints, we had 130 criminal complaints. Just to highlight a few, our 4 o'clock position, which is the orange, we had 12% disturbing the peace. 6 o'clock position, that's the purple, 16% was property damage. And our 7 o'clock position, that's, let's go with, does that look like pink? Sometimes I'm colorblind. That's our theft. We had 22 thefts. Moving on, we have our traffic citations. Normally, we average anywhere from 130 to 160. You can see this went up to 288. Because this number's higher, our overall caseload is higher too, that I pointed out when we started, the 1,000-some complaints. What happened is in the month of July, we did TZD, which is towards zero deaths. So we have extra enforcement working like a county-wide speed enforcement. So you'll see 15% in the blue, that's 42 tickets that were issued. Normally, we're looking at 25, sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes lower. So you can see our tickets went up in this month, and our verbal warnings, which is the pink, 65%, we had 187 verbal warnings. And then the green, 15%, was 43 written warnings. So that's kind of why our numbers went up there. Moving on to what's going on in our jail, we're averaging 34 inmates for Morrison County. You can see we're housing other multiple counties, but the ones to really highlight is Stearns County and Itasca County. Itasca County, we have 8 for the month of July, which we averaged, and Stearns County was 6. So a lot of these jails are full and they need space, so that's where we come into play. Our total inmates, including Morrison County and out-of-county inmates, we're averaging 53. STS. Our total inmates at STS is 12, total hours 331. Now, last month I pulled those statistics. We were at 24 total inmates, so you can see we lost half, and our hours were 472. So I reached out to our jail administrator, Scott McKissick, kind of try to figure out what's going on here, because we're hearing it from our STS supervisor as well. It's hard to get inmates now to get out on work release. You know, we have a couple and we're managing, but we don't have the bigger crews like we used to. So what we did is a little research. 43 inmates in Morrison County, 37 of them are on bond right now, which means they have a bail. And they're all pre-sentenced. So really, in our program, in order to work, you have to be sentenced, and you have to be it has to be a nonviolent charge. So we're hoping it's just a hiccup, a little rut, and we'll be able to pick up and move on where we used to be and get our numbers up. Because we all know it's good for our community. Our out-of-county inmates, basically, we had 42 was our average for, or not our average, that was the number for the month of July, and we collected $32,120 in revenue. Any questions so far? Our 2-year comparison, we already explained our total complaints went up and why. You can see that went up in July of 2017 compared to July of 2016. Pretty much everything across the board did go up. So if there's any questions on that? Otherwise, what I plan on doing is just turning things over to Victoria Ingram. She's just gonna kind of highlight a few things going on with emergency management, as well as our current dispatch situation, what's going on there.
Good morning.
Morning.
As Sheriff Morrison said, he just asked me to provide an update on dispatch and emergency management. So just to highlight a few things in the dispatch world, as you know, we are working 24/7 dual coverage in dispatch. That's going very well. We completed a dispatch renovation by adding a third workstation. That third workstation has been very helpful for us. We use it during special events when we anticipate phone and radio traffic to increase. So we're able to use it for a power shift and add an additional dispatcher for shorter shifts during that time frame as far as with an event. We also utilize a third workstation for training purposes. So when we have new staff that are coming through, we're able to use this third workstation to train a dispatcher in more of a dedicated, controlled training environment as opposed to sitting live on the system. So that kind of helps as far as the training until they're able to start going a little bit more independent in working the live traffic. We also use the third workstation when we need to have maintenance performed on the other 2 live workstations. So if we need to take one of the other 2 dispatch workstations down, we can transition a dispatcher over to this third workstation while we take one of the workstations down and perform maintenance on it. And then we also will, we have the third workstation, so it just anticipating any kind of future growth as far as with increase of calls and so forth. It can be used full-time if we need to increase our center to a 3-seat communication center. So that's just there and it can be used so that the third workstation is fully functioning as are the other 2. So if we anticipate growth, we will have that there in case we need to become a 3-seat. We also had created, when I came on board 2 years ago, a lead dispatch position, and that's going very well. Our lead dispatcher, Jane Holman, she is a senior dispatcher. She's been with the agency for 16 years. She assists with training new staff. She also is responsible for reviewing daily work of dispatchers with any incidents that they create, assigning tasks and follow-up as necessary with the other dispatchers. And then in the future, she'll be working with me on updating our policies and procedures with new standards that come down for our communication center as a whole. Any questions?
Oh, good.
Okay. And then on the emergency management side, currently I am up, as I'm sure people are aware, but I'm currently updating our emergency operations plan and resource manual. We have to do that annually to stay in compliance with the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. I completed my State of Minnesota Department of Homeland Security Emergency Management Basic Emergency Management Certification, as well as the Emergency Management Director Certification. We participated in a joint exercise with Camp Ripley. There was a crashed aircraft exercise that we had done. It was more of a multi-jurisdictional approach, being that they are a military installation and we are on a civilian side, so it was to review those military versus civilian processes, so people are on the same page who was going to be responsible for what. It was a great exercise. Camp Ripley had probably over 25 participants, just with they're very specific on who does what within Camp Ripley as far as their duties. So that answered a lot of questions. It was a great exercise. I also participated in a converging technologies exercise. It was a statewide exercise with disciplines that are involved in emergency services agencies, so police, fire, EMS, public works, and we basically had it was more of a workshop, but it was to discuss as far as with what disciplines need with technologies that are coming down, you know, the pike, the current technologies and those evolving technologies. So it was to sit down and say, if we were gonna have this type of incident occur, what was, you know, Public Works gonna need versus what was, you know, police going to need? And so that was a really good exercise. I'm also participating in a dam failure exercise with an adjoining county. So that's very helpful just to talk about those instances, if we were to have a dam failure, depending on the location, what the impact would be with the different communities. If we needed to do something as far as with a multi, you know, agency response, just to ensure that everybody, you know, to review your plans and make sure you have everything in place. And then we are also currently participating in a foreign animal disease exercise with 3 other counties and the Minnesota Department of Health. So if anybody's familiar with the avian flu, just as far as with that, if something were to happen and it was gonna be cross, you know, county boundaries, how that was gonna impact as far as different populations, how could everybody support each other from, you know, the Minnesota Department of Health, they're gonna be having all these other counties saying, hey, we need help. How is that gonna look and how are we gonna get the help that we need and make sure that we get the information that we need to respond to the incident accordingly. And then I will also be attending the AMAM conference, which is the Association of Minnesota Emergency Managers. And then we were gonna do an update on our command post. We have reached out to the vendor and are moving forward with the process. And we have expected delivery of the mobile command trailer by the end of the year. Any questions?
I had one and now I forgot.
I'll be back for the budget meeting if you
Yeah.
remember.
That's good. Oh, when you have something in another county that has a problem, do you just go there or do you wait till they ask you to come there for assistance?
Yeah, I guess normally they're gonna call if they need immediate assistance, and then we're gonna go. And we'll figure out the aftermath later. But I have reached out before to Crow Wing County. They had a major storm go through, and this is just a scenario that I'm using. You know, they had multiple storms within the last couple of years. And when I reached out, hey, do you need any help? The sheriff's response is yes, because of a lot of our own deputies' yards and damage, they were impacted. So sometimes they don't reach out, we have to reach out to them, but they scratch our back, we're gonna scratch theirs. And it's every county around us, so.
Well, I'm glad that we do that. I guess what I was kind of getting at, that one shooting that they had in Pennsylvania or whatever, when that lady came and described how many people came, and that was a disaster. Because there was just, you know, there wasn't the organization, they just kept coming wanting to help, and how that created a lot of problems.
Yeah, I think command and control is huge, and figuring out what you're gonna do with all your resources and additional resources ahead of time is huge. I use a case scenario where the mall shooting.
Yep.
In that particular case, they were reaching out to other counties, and we just immediately, when we got the notification, we went to assist. But they took good command and control. They figured out, okay, we only need so many resources here, but now the resources were really needed immediately at the mall, but now it's like, who's gonna take our calls? So we had our own county guys taking calls for the city of St. Cloud, which it works out. It's just sometimes the directions are like, okay, where is this?
Yeah.
But we make it work out, and we figure out the aftermath later, so.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thanks. Thank you very kindly.
Have a great day, guys.
Okay, next we have extension report. Dan. How are you today?
Good, good morning.
Morning, Dan.
Thank you for coming.
Yes. All right, it's gonna be stuck in the wall. There, all right.
Sorry. I'm not sure what
This is a
happened over
test.
there. It was, and now it's gone, and I don't know.
All right. All right, well, I'll highlight a couple things, and then if you have other questions or things that you wanna talk with me about, you're welcome to, or along the way. I'm sure one of these days Becky's gonna be in October, I think, usually, to give you a good rundown of all the state fair summaries from county fair and state fair and other activities. So I won't spend a lot of time on that piece, I don't think. I think one of the things in the first point there about shooting sports is that they have a shooting sports state event in September. And so we think about a lot of our 4-H kids going from the county fair and then down to the state fair for their state activities. But there are some projects like shooting sports that are hard to do on the state fairgrounds. And then some things like the horse project area, that they don't have their state horse shows at the state fair. They have them later just because they just got lots of horse things going on at the state fair. And there just isn't time and space to do all of that there. And so there are some activities that take place that kids go on to beyond the state fair. And I would also note about the fourth one down, it talks about a Morrison County 4-H member who participated in the dog project area with Benton and Stearns County group. And so again, just a comment of counties working together to share resources where that makes sense and to give kids opportunities wherever we can, as much as we can. So that's a couple comments from there. In my report, the picture that I have there is a question I got. It was in the northern part of Benton County, but illustrates one of the issues that we deal with sometimes. This was looking at, it started out as a question about somebody's potatoes in a garden. They had planted a bunch of potatoes, and with the idea that they would take their old potato digger that they dug out of the grove and to get the family together and dig potatoes in the fall. Well, this spring after he planted the potatoes came up and there were a lot of wrinkled leaves and curled up and cupped leaves, and he wondered what was going on. Was it the neighbor spraying? Was it something else? We tracked it down the best we can, probably to something he had done himself, and patching or spraying some patches of some weeds in a meadow where he was putting up hay with a herbicide that carried over in the hay. Beef cattle ate it. He dumped the manure on the garden. It carried over in the manure enough into soil so when the potatoes grew they were still affected by that herbicide carryover. And there are a couple of herbicides that are known for having that potential residual in that kind of a scenario. And so he needs to think about that, but it was a good learning opportunity related to diagnostics of some of these things. One of the herbicides that we're reading about a lot in the news these days or hearing about is a product called dicamba. It's been around for a long time, but over the last couple of years, a company has developed soybeans, genetically modified soybeans that are resistant to dicamba, a really significant broadleaf herbicide product that helps us to control tall water hemp and ragweed and some other weeds that we're having problems with now in some of those fields. And so there's a lot of discussion about people finding neighbors spraying tolerant soybeans to dicamba, but having drift move to neighbors' fields where the soybeans are not tolerant to it. So Department of Ag and Extension and other organizations are really busy trying to track down where those problems are occurring and why, so we can be smarter about how we use that product and try to minimize those kinds of issues. So the growth regulator herbicides like this person had in his potatoes, the dicamba that we're using in soybeans now in some fields are really significant issues for learning how to use those products correctly, minimize risk, and evaluate situations where we see some of that showing up. So that's been interesting to watch a little bit. Next page, I have a picture of a hayfield. And this was run down by Rice, where they had a fair amount of winter kill last year. And they wanted to get one more year out of that field. Hopefully, they interseeded the field with an annual grass called Italian ryegrass to fill in some of the space where there wasn't alfalfa. And that's been an interesting field to watch. That's one of the things we talk with people about when we have winter injury where they might want to fill in and try to salvage one more year out of the field. And so it's been interesting to watch that field through the summer and follow that practice. The other thing I note at the bottom there again is financial stress resources that the Minnesota Extension Service has available for counseling with farmers about financial struggles. And I think with the way crops look this fall, we're not going to get quite the bushels that we did last year on a lot of farms. That's going to cut into what farmers have available to pay the bills with this fall. Some expectation that there may be more financial challenges during the coming year as people close out their books for the 2017 crop year and try to negotiate loans for 2018 again this year. So we keep reminding people that there is some help available there, along with help through the farm business management programs and some other efforts that are ongoing. And so just want to make note of that again. Emily's page is next, and she's been involved in working on some of the dairy tours this summer. That's been one of her main events. We've also had an intern working with us this summer named Haley Lighting. She's from southeastern Minnesota originally. So there are some notes in the reports here this time about efforts that she has made to work with us on helping to organize some of these events and do some of those things. And so that's ongoing. And then one of Beth Berlin's major topics on her page is talking about some of the radio work that she does with different radio stations, and also having some conversation with KLTF here in Little Falls to see if they'd like to make use of some time with her to talk with homeowners about some of their yard and garden questions. Emily and I and Jim Sulphur, our regional dairy educator, do have spots on KLTF every week that we take turns doing. And so we really appreciate that radio contact and that opportunity to get information out to folks as well. And then there's a page that Haley wrote about her summer intern experience. She finished now last Friday, I think it was. We had a little meeting with her last week to review some of that. We've got about a 4 or 5 page document that she wrote that we'll be sharing with our county extension committee the next time we meet, that outlines some of the work that she was involved with during the summer. And she really dug in and got involved and did some real work that was very helpful to us, as well as a good learning experience for her. And so one of the things she talks about here is a small farm tour that she pretty much organized down in the Cold Spring area, and a very useful event for farmers who are looking, smaller landowners who are looking for ways to make use of some of their resources and maybe raise a little livestock, do some things with crops or yards or gardens or high tunnels or horticultural crops. It turned out to be a very good opportunity. And when they were done with the tour, they said, you know, we'd be willing to do this again someday. So it's really nice to make those kinds of contacts that you can continue to work with. And then there's a note that Carmen, who was working as Carmen Gensky, who was working as our SNAP ed educator, left employment for another part of the county here. And so you still have use of her skills and talents. Regional staff in neighboring counties are kind of filling in on some of that work now, and I think the intention is that they will refill that position as well. Otherwise, we're looking at fall harvest season kind of approaching. That's hard to think about when it seems like we just started summer, but it is. You know, some of the maple trees are turning a little bit, days are getting shorter, and things are happening. I see some guys that are green chopping some corn silies now, where they're low on feed supplies probably, and doing some green chopping. Some small grain harvest has taken place. I think that crops are really variable, kind of all over the board this year, with late planting dates and replanting, and wet weather issues and dry weather issues in some of our sandier soils where people miss some of the rain. But just there's going to be a real mix of things going on, I think, with the fall harvest season this fall. And so we really hope that people primarily, first of all, aim to work at it safely and make the best of things that they can. So I'll stop there and leave it at that, unless you get other questions or things you want to kick around.
You see our corn crop isn't as good as last year? Is that
That's-
because last year was so great? Because, I mean, it looks good.
Yeah,
You know, or-
I think countywide, I think it'll be, I doubt if the bushels are gonna be there. 2015 and 2016 were both record-breaking years, one after the other. I think this year, we just got a lot more mix of things going on. Places where corn was planted late because of wet weather on some soils in the spring, but there certainly is there's some guys that are gonna have some phenomenal crops again this fall. But I think the countywide mix is probably not gonna be as good as it has been the last 2 years.
All depends on when that cold night comes.
Yes, yes.
The big key.
And so I think a lot of people are looking, hoping for a fairly warm September to keep that crop moving along, and hopefully we can get there with a lot of it before the frost.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right.
Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, Deb, county board warrants.
Yeah, it's really all I have is warrants.
Okay, can I get
I would so move on the
got a
warrants.
motion by Commissioner Johnson to approve the warrants? A
Oh.
second by Commissioner Jelinski.
Yep.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by
Roll call.
Yep. I'll get this down in next year. Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
and I.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I told you I
Thank
could
you.
get it.
Thank you, Deb.
Okay, Public Works.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Steve.
That's a lot of information, it looks like, on that paper, Steve. It's typed small.
Well, since I was gonna throw the board under the bus, I thought I'd.
I was gonna say, make it
Good time, Sean.
At our planning meeting, we had reviewed the master plan for Belle Prairie Park and the Sioux Line. And following that, the board had asked that we try to have some additional outreach and bring in additional comments. So we held an open house, and we had some folks come into the courthouse and showed them and went through what the plans are calling for. And we had a very good article in the Morrison County Record that covered what took place at our open house. And that generated some additional comment. And so we're still continuing to try to work to get some additional participation from residents. So you may have heard advertising on the radio that our master plans have been posted to our website, so they're available for people to inspect or review. And following that, the commissioners are listed along with Public Works if there's people that want to comment on what they see in the plan. But these two sheets are a synopsis of what the plans show. We went through and listed those type of things that we're trying to do at each of the facilities. And so I wanted you to have those available. It's a summary of what is in the two master plans as we bring that forward and move it forward. Hopefully on the September 5th, I had to move it to the September 5th meeting, so we gave people some additional time to review and comment. And I think of all of the stuff that is out there, it continues to come back to the issue of the use of the Sioux Line Bridge over the Mississippi River and whether to work towards allowing ATVs to utilize it at the same time that you have bike and pedestrians, where currently it is non-motorized, excuse me, through that segment. And so I know that you've seen several of the comments that have come through back on that. That'll be the one issue that if you adopt those plans, then we would be working towards trying to accomplish the way they're written right now. That will not be an easy thing to accomplish, though, because we had accepted funding initially through the federal highway bill that required it to be non-motorized. It will take some work in dealing with the Federal Highway Administration to get approval if the board so wishes to try to accomplish that. And so we're weighing safety issues, and there's safety issues both ways. You've seen the safety issues that you may have conflict between ATVs and pedestrians and bikes. That's a safety issue, but also the way crossing the river and where you can cross the river with ATVs is a safety issue for those folks right now. So with that, I just kind of wanted to have that preliminary conversation here with the board. I know you're well aware of these because we had reviewed it previously, but I think the summary here for you, in case somebody does have additional comment, I wanted you to have that.
Steve, we have this master plan now. Financially, the county's not going out and spending money on this trail right now, right? It's kind of put together so that you go out for grants.
Right, the master plans have to be in place in order for us to be eligible for legacy funding. And, that's a big hurdle because we have a lot of facilities. A lot of facilities will never be eligible for legacy funding because they're not regionally significant and they're not going to be able to qualify for those funds. We submitted pretty much all of our parks along with the trail, and the only two facilities that we currently have under your jurisdiction were the Sioux Line Trail and the Belle Prairie Park that were a high probability that they reached the level where they would be eligible once the master plans are completed for funding through legacy dollars. So that's what we are trying to accomplish. This was the high level view. It kind of everything you'd like to see in a lifetime accomplished. And so it'll be in there. And once the board adopts a plan, then we will move it through the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails Commission for their approval. And then that puts us in a position where we can start writing and applying for those funds.
I think sometimes when people see this, they think we're gonna spend county money and do all these things, and they don't quite understand when they don't read the whole thing, that it's a process that you go through, and if you don't have this, then you're not eligible for those funds.
Right, right. And there is some match usually to some of these, so there is some county funds that'll go into them as you move them forward, but like I said, it's a lifetime work here that we've got listed, and so that you put everything in there so that when the time is right, you can capitalize on it.
Mr. Chair, I think it's also important that we point out that it's one master plan, but really it's two. Really, it's two master plans. It's the Sioux Line Trail and it's Belle Prairie Park.
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, it's one master
Yep,
plan, I
yep,
get
yep,
it, but
yep.
it's really two.
We handled them with our task force as
Yep.
one, but you're right, they're really separate individual master
Yep.
plans for each facility. So that's where that is, and we'll be bringing that in at the next board meeting for your consideration. Did also want to, again, just kind of go through more detailed status report on where our construction work is. We got a lot of work going on right now, and we knew we would be in this position that we were starting late for a number of reasons. Some of it being permitting issues that took longer to get through that process. Other ones were, we had a detour down with MnDOT in that Upsala area on our project down there that they needed to complete their project because they were detouring on a road that we were gonna be under construction on, and that's how we worked that arrangement. That one ended up moving, getting pushed out a little bit further than we wanted it. But to begin with, number 4, that's a simple bituminous thin overlay. It was a haul road for a lot of the work down in the southwest part of our county, but following the way we had that project set up, there was durapatching of some of the worst cracks that took place. We've got that done. So the ride is pretty decent. I think that there isn't any reason to think that just that thin overlay isn't gonna hold up. That'll be the last project that Anderson Brothers do out of that plant set, so it won't get hit once that work is completed. I think it should be just fine. 19 was the one that was detoured over by MnDOT. And we did allow the contractor to reclaim the pavement on that after July 10th. That is what we had agreed to. And so the reclaimer is sometimes a hard piece of equipment to come by. There's not a lot of contractors that sub that work. So when you have the opportunity and you're going to, reclaiming has become a much more utilized method of construction. You don't want to, sometimes you don't want to pass that by because then you can't get it when you need it. We did, after our conversations with our general, allow that to be reclaimed, but then the subcontractor doing the widening and some of the grading had additional work that took him a little bit longer, especially with the wet conditions. He's in there now. We've got probably 3/4 of the reconstruction of the mile completed, so by the end of this week that should be done. Then it's some additional widening for the rest of 19 as you come into Upsala, and we also have Tower Road that we're doing for the city. So in a couple of weeks that project I expect to be right on where it needs to be. It's going to be a little bit later than contract requirements I expect, so we might have some issues that we have to deal with there. 26, both pieces of 26, one is from the west limits of Royalton, mill and oil overlay to Highway 10, then from Highway 10 going east to 54, which is the road that runs by the high school. Tri-City Paving has that work. It looks like they're the sub on the Safe Routes to School project for the city of Royalton. And I expect that sometime early next week that they're going to be paving on the Safe Routes to School project. But they also are going to try to work in, expect the 54, that piece of ours that runs north and south along the high school, so that that's completed before school starts.
26 itself may have to get held up a week or so later because of the fact of just the way all the work is tying together. 31 was a project that was a joint effort with Todd County that's complete. 43 is this thin overlay that was tied with Knife River's project down here with King Road and 45, which the paving is complete on that project. 45, they'll finish up the first lift of bituminous on that. This is a rehabilitation project. Pipes were all replaced, shoulder widening. And so the first lift of paving is expected to be completed probably by the end of today. So it's moving right along. 54, like I said, will be tied in with the safe routes down in Royalton. County Road 219 on our county line with Todd was a joint effort with them that is complete. 228 is a cut across between Trunk Highway 238 and R15. It's under Anderson Brothers contract that will be done when 19 is paved and Tower Road. 257 was a thin overlay down here going into the airport. We haven't done anything with that to this point in time. It may be one that we tie in when we regrade the connection of the airport road out to Evergreen Road, or it's 160th. 268 is under contract for bridge replacement. That nothing has begun yet. King Road, the bridge has been removed. Regrading is taking place on the realignment for the replacement of the bridge. And so, and restoration of the slopes and along the channel that's all happening right now. That should, by the end of the week, be pretty much complete. 110th Avenue was a bridge replacement on the Swan River that was a joint project with Swan River Township, and that project's complete. Safe Routes to School is moving pretty well right along. With this week being a big week in finishing up the 88 replacements in the intersections, and then Tri-City be following up next week with the paving. So that's moving right along now that it got this far. It was a kind of a tough one to get going, but it seems to be working out okay. And these various projects have been completed since earlier this year. The curve delineations with the chevron installations, our ground and edge line, our pavement markings have been done for quite a while already. So that's what I have, Mr. Chairman.
Lots of projects.
Yeah, lots of work.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions for Steve? None, I thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you very much, Steve.
Okay, committee reports, upcoming schedules. I guess, Jeff, do you want to do yours first?
I certainly can. Starting from the 27th, maybe? Yep.
Correct. August 27th through September 9th.
Hey, Brad.
27th to the 9th. And here we go. On the 28th, 7 o'clock in the evening, Planning Commission. On the 29th, 8:30 in the morning, we've got a planning meeting. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we've got a budget meeting. That should be right here in the board meeting, in the boardroom. 30th and 31st, I've got nothing. On September 1st, we've got TSWAC at 8:30 in the morning, and that's out at the landfill. Harding Bazaar is on the 3rd. On the 5th of September, at 9 o'clock, we've got a county board meeting. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, scheduled is a budget meeting. That evening at 7 o'clock at night is a Board of Adjustments meeting. On the 7th of September, Thursday the 7th at 10 o'clock in the morning, I've got a legislative committee conference call, which would be held at my house. On the 8th, there's a RAC meeting, an Armor RAC meeting in Wright County at 10 o'clock in the morning. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Is that
Mike?
Public Works Building?
Public Works Building for
Where is
which
that? In
one?
Wright County?
Don't know. I don't
Okay.
have that yet. I could very well be, but I don't know.
All right.
The only thing different I have is the 30th, public health.
And that's, what time
That's
is
in
that?
the public health library at 5 o'clock.
And I don't have anything different. I'm gone till the 30th, so I'm gone half of that time, so. Dwayne?
Okay, P and Z, Jeff already said. After the planning meeting, between that, after the budget meeting, we've got a audit exit meeting from 3 to 4 o'clock I have here in the boardroom. Next Tuesday, the 29th, Teeswick. We have board on the 5th, budget at 1, and myself, I don't know, are you back that
I'm
night?
back.
Okay,
We're-
we have
we're talking the
RDFA at Pine Country Bank at 4:30 in the afternoon. Then on the 7th, I got a South Country meeting in Owatonna at 9 o'clock on the 7th. That's it.
Randy,
Yes, sir. Let's take a look. I think you guys got pretty much,
You got supersonic hearing or something, or what?
yeah. I can multitask. I can multitask. We got that, soil and water, planning, I'll beat AMC. You got that down? No, we're good.
okay.
The AMC, is that the extension meeting?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm surprised. That was good good catch. You have to bring that one up.
all right.
All right, so can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Johnson,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. All in favor, signify
Aye.
by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much.
All right, 1
See
o'clock.
everybody at 1.
1 o'clock.